Hi, this video will look at the ProMonitor module within ProContract. ProMonitor allows you to build up a central repository of all buyer and supplier documentation in relation to a particular contract. The contract monitoring application replaces the more usual management methods of spreadsheets or committing a contract to memory and enables a procurement officer to create a profile for each contract awarded to a supplier or group of suppliers. This profile will allow the procurer to plan the contract management process, receive reminders for key events, and to record contract activities including correspondence, records of review, meetings, and supplier analysis. The performance of each supplier who's involved in a contract can be monitored and will provide the relevant management information to manage any situations that may arise. When a contract is awarded, the procurer can set up the monitoring process within ProContract to manage all of the suppliers involved in the delivery of the service or goods. Key events are set up and all information pertaining to the event may be recorded with trigger dates set for reminders before a particular event is due. The ProMonitor module can also be opened up to suppliers so they can keep their information up to date. To begin, the administrator must set up the contract monitoring step. That step is created by navigating to the Manage Steps area and clicking Add New Step. The administrator then adds the step in a normal way, but you'll notice that one of the types is Contract Monitor. This step can then be added to any relevant template usually at the end, or the step may be used to monitor contracts that have been awarded outside of ProContract. If this is the case, just set up another template which contains only the step Monitor Contract. In this example, we are going to assume that the whole tender process has been run through ProContract and we are now going to access the contract monitoring step. So I'm just going to navigate to the relevant tender process. And begin the contract monitoring step for the first time. As you can see here, there is no option to open the step. This is because to be able to access the contract monitoring module, you must make sure that the relevant user is listed as the contract monitor. It may be the case that you would like to give the supplier access to certain stages within this contract monitoring module. If that is the case, navigate to Manage Monitoring Team and you can actually select an account manager from each of the supplier's profiles. In this example, I'm just going to do a manual search for the supplier that I'd like to be involved within this contract monitoring stage. So we place the actual company name in the box and select the relevant supplier account. That supplier contact will now become the account manager. As you can see in this example, it's also asking for a project manager from the buying side. When I click Edit within the Project Manager role, it gives me the option of anybody that I've just selected in that main Contract Monitor role team. So in this example, it's showing user 3, who I will add in as the Project Manager. They're available, of course, because I had placed them in as contract monitors. However, your administrator can create as many of those custom contract monitoring roles, each with their own edit rights, within the custom advanced contract management roles area. As you can see, my administrator has called this role Project Manager, and if we just click into it, we can change the title if we need to. And we can also delete any roles as well. The reason I can't delete this in this particular scenario is because somebody has already been added to that particular role in a team. This custom role will become very important later in the video when we look at creating custom fields within custom tabs. What we will now do is open the contract monitoring step for the first time. The system will now ask us to complete the main monitoring detail. It is here. We will enter the estimated or actual total spend and annual spend. We will list the successful supplier or suppliers. And we can also make any attachments in this particular area here. For example, you may wish to upload a copy of the contract. These attachments will remain internal. So firstly, we enter the estimated total spend and the estimated annual spend. Next, we select the suppliers that we wish to monitor within this stage. If you have done any recent searches within the system, that search criteria will be saved and the results already shown. So at this point you can search for your successful suppliers or your awarded suppliers using that search facility. Alternatively, if you have used a decision step within your process, you can click List Awarded Suppliers and it will link back to that decision step and show any that have been marked as successful. We then just select the radio button and select Supplier. The system will now show any existing contacts that the supplier has within their profile. If the contact that you're dealing with isn't on the list, you can add a new contact and you can select a new address. In this case, I'm just going to select the contact that I want to deal with and click Save. The green tick now indicates that we have selected someone from that supplier account. If there were any more successful suppliers or suppliers that needed to be monitored, I would just then repeat the process, finding the relevant suppliers and adding them in. As you can see, that supplier is now listed. If you would like to add any attachments at this stage, just click on Attachments at the bottom. This will take you to a browse facility where you can find the relevant attachment and save into the system. You can also store links and upload multiple attachments if necessary. When all relevant information has been added, we click Save. This now takes us into the contract monitoring module. Remember, at any time you can go back and change that main contract monitor detail if you need to. So what we see now is the contract monitor dashboard. As you can see, there are different tabs along the bottom which show the various aspects of the contract monitoring step. These are called modules. There are two different types of tabs or modules. Standard modules that come with the system, and then we also have custom modules or custom tabs, which can be set up to reflect the requirements of your organization. Firstly, we will look at the standard tabs. These standard tabs or modules include complaints, where you can register or make a note of any complaints that have come in. Correspondence, this allows all letters, emails, etc. to be linked with this particular contract. Rebates, so to record any rebates given and the reasons recorded. Review meeting, this allows the procurer to schedule various review meetings. We have savings, which will allow you to record any savings that are made against this particular contract. For example, any efficiencies or any discounts. Spend review, this can be a schedule of spend reviews to examine spending against budget. Price amendment, so any prices or any price increments or amendments that take place during this particular contract. And vendor appraisals will allow appraisals of the vendor with a facility for on-site or off-site appraisals. There is also one other standard module not shown here, which is the further competition module. This will show details of any further competitions run from a framework by either parent or external organisations within a pro-contract framework tender process. The process of adding entries to these different modules are quite similar. In this example, I will show adding an entry to the complaint module. So we mentioned the complaint module allows us to store a record of all internal or customer issues against the contract. Let's add an entry. So I click View Module Details and I click Create New Complaint. I select the relevant supplier from the list of suppliers that have been selected within this stage. Pick the complaint type, whether it was from a customer or internal, and we select the complaint date. Optional fields are whether the complaint was upheld, and I can leave any comments as well. As you can see, attachments can also be made to any of these modules. That entry is then saved against this module. What we will now do is have a look and show how the administrator can create custom tabs to reflect exactly what you expect to see or store against this particular contract. As you can see, one of the custom modules that have been added here are compensation events. Let's just take a quick look at what the administrator has done to create this custom tab. So from the home page, the administrator can navigate to the Custom tab Administration. I'm just going to select the relevant tab that's already been created from this list. So there are two types of custom tabs. The first is a data store. This is much like the complaints example we looked at earlier in the video. It allows for different fields that need to be filled in with information on each particular contract process. The other type of custom tab available is the document store. The document store will display data in a customizable folder tree structure which can be expanded or collapsed with subfolders much like a file system. At this point the custom tab is also given a title, description, and we also select whether attachments are going to be allowed. What we can now do is specify exactly who or exactly what role gets access to this particular module and also on what level. As you can see, the two roles that we've seen before, the account manager from the supplier side and our custom role, the project manager, are showing up here. In this example, as you can see, anybody named as a project manager within a tender process or within the contract monitoring module will be able to create, edit or delete entries that are placed within this particular tab. In this example, I haven't given the supplier access to this tab at all. But of course, if I did, if I maybe wanted the suppliers to access it to upload attachments or keep information up to date, I could give them access to this particular module. We have then given this tab field sets. Field sets are really a group of fields. So in this case, we can see that we've created three fields: main details and explanation, date of the compensation event, and the cost. Those three fields will be held within the main compensation event details field set. We also have one ungrouped field that the buyer will be expected to fill in, which is any other information. We can select different types for these fields, which represent what information is required from the person filling it in, and whether these are mandatory or not. More information about creating these custom tabs, field sets and fields can be found in the Contract Monitor Custom Fields User Guide. Now we'll actually see how that custom tab looks within the contract monitoring module. So we're just going to navigate back to the contract monitoring step. I've selected compensation events within the modules drop down. I'm going to click view module details and we're just going to create a new item. Remember, it's allowing me to do this because I've been set as the project manager, which means I have the ability to create new items. Firstly, we would select the relevant supplier that this is in relation to. Next, we see we have the field set, main compensation event details, and we can now add the relevant information using the fields. So firstly, the main details and explanation. We then add the date and the cost. There's also help on the right hand side. The ungroup field shows at the bottom under extended information. When the information is complete, we can click save and that will store that entry within this module. You can also choose whether to add this entry to the calendar or not, which we will look at in a moment. There is one module that works in a slight different way to the others, and that is the vendor appraisal module. Vendor appraisals can be used to assess how a particular supplier is doing against agreed KPIs that were set when the contract was awarded. To create a new appraisal, I select the relevant supplier, and then I choose whether I want to use a system evaluation template or not. If this particular vendor appraisal or evaluation has already been done, we can simply click No, put in the final score that was achieved outside of the system in percentage, and select the appraisal date. We can leave any comments and add any attachments in the normal way. Clicking Next will then store that entry against the supplier. Alternatively, if I just access the one I started earlier, there's also the ability to use an evaluation template. You can build those KPIs into the system and use them to assess the supplier. So if I click Next, I'm going to use the supplier KPI vendor appraisal template which has already been created. Information about creating these templates from scratch can be found in the Contract Monitoring User Guide. If I just click on the title, you'll see in this particular example, we are going to get people to score the suppliers out of 5 against customer service and delivery, which are weighted 50% each. And within each of these sections we have 2 questions. Which you can see there. So what we will do is select that appraisal. We'll use that selected template. This appraisal template can now be exported, so you can hand it out to people to fill in. And once complete, you would just come back and fill in the final scores against each of these entries. What it will then do is, based on the weightings for each question and section, it will work out the total percentage for that particular supplier. There's also the ability to add comments and to also add attachments. It can be saved at any point. When all the information is added, we can mark it complete. And that score will now be saved. The system just keeps a running average for each supplier that's being appraised. We will now look at the calendar within each contract monitoring step. So every single contract monitoring step within the system has its own dedicated calendar. Within this calendar, meetings can be added. So we place all the relevant information in regarding the meeting, making sure that all mandatory parts are filled in. We can add any attachments which will go out with this meeting reminder. So you may want to add an agenda for the meeting in there. And we can now add who will be attending. We can choose from team members, from just the monitoring team members, or from suppliers. We can also send an invitation to just an email address by selecting Other. So we select the user, or in this case the team member, and I'm also going to invite the supplier to the meeting as well. This will show a list of any suppliers included in this particular tender process, and will also show the suppliers that are named as the monitoring suppliers. Once everyone is added, we click Next, and we click Finish to finalise the meeting. This will then be shown in the contract calendar. A notification or a reminder email will be sent to those buyers and suppliers that you've invited to the meeting, and they would then be able to log in, come into the relevant contract, open the calendar up, click on the meeting, and they would be able to accept or decline it. Whether they're accepting or declining the meeting, they have the option of adding notes if they want to as well. We can now keep a track on exactly who is accepted and who hasn't responded to the meeting. In the live system, there is also an option to send these meetings to your email client. For example, if you use Outlook, you would have the option to send that to your Outlook calendar as well, so you can keep a copy in there. There is also the ability to add reminders within the calendar. So we would give the reminder a subject and description if required, and select the date that you would like this reminder to be sent to the user. You can choose whether you wanted to include it on the contract monitoring calendar as an entry or not. You can add any attachments to this reminder, and then you select exactly who you would like to be notified of this reminder. In this case, I want the reminder to be sent to the buyer and also the supplier. That means that on the 3rd of February 2015, this subject and description will become an email reminder that will be sent to each of the people listed to be alerted. Again, much like the meetings, in the live system you will have the ability to send a copy of this entry to your own email client, for example, Outlook. The upcoming calendar entries are also shown on the dashboard. Within each contract monitoring step, there is also access to a discussions area. This can be used for any buyer-supplier communications that need to go out within this monitoring stage. As you can see, it lists the account managers. We select who we want to issue the message to. Type the subject and body with any attachments and click send. That supplier or that account manager will then be notified. They can then log into the system, navigate to the discussions area within their My Contracts section, and they would then be able to reply to this message within the system. If you would like any more information about the ProMonitor module, in-depth information can be found in the Contract Monitoring User Guide or the Contract Monitoring Custom Fields User Guide.